Welcome to Heart, a podcast about all things heart-related, presented by the physicians of Advanced Cardiovascular Specialists. I'm your host, Susan Curtin, and our hope for Heart is to meet you where you are with valuable information from trusted experts in the field of cardiology. Today, we have Dr. Trey Balkam and Mr. Richard Feinberg. We are discussing the Impella 5.5 with SmartAssist. Dr. Balkam, Richard, welcome.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Mr. Feinberg, for coming.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you guys with us today. Now, Richard, you are a patient of Dr. Balkam's, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am now retired. I worked for 43 years as an attorney. Most of that was in private practice, but 13 years of it was with the district attorney's office. I finished in the appellate section of the district attorney's office. And during that period of time is when I had my heart attack. Now, I'm 70 years old. I'm married. I have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and 1 dog, a Dalmatian, Ruby.
Oh, how nice. How nice. Do you have any hobbies?
Of course. These days, I spend a lot of time with my wife. I spend a lot of time with my grandchildren. I walk my dog, I read. I'm thinking about taking up bicycling again. I had let that go for a long time. I go to the gym 4 times a week. And, I try to take care of myself and do smart things.
Well, it sounds like you're a very, very active guy. Now, how did your paths cross with Dr. Balkam?
Well, I think it was the morning of October the 13th or October the 14th. And I woke up early in the morning, and I had this horrible case of indigestion. It was worse than anything I'd ever had in my life. And I sat down. I took some Pepto-Bismol and some Tums and stuff like that, things that everybody does, and it had no effect. So, and it obviously fooled me, okay? Then I sat down and started thinking about it, and I reasoned it out that it had to be a heart attack, okay? And of course, it was a heart attack. It was the heart attack they call the Widowmaker. And so fortunately, we were very close to Christus Highland, and my wife jumped in the car and drove me to the hospital immediately. When I got there, the Shumpert staff was expedient, perfect. They got me, rushed me in. I know they did an EKG, which was bad. They took me in the cath lab, and I think they did an angiogram. And then I met Dr. Balkam, and Dr. Balkam was there to save my life, which he did. And I am very grateful to him, and he can explain it better than I can.
Well, I mean, that is amazing. And the fact that it presented to you, too, as indigestion, I think we all think that you were going to be clutching our chests and immobile on the ground, but it was a different experience for you. Did it continue to feel like that?
Well, the medical reports say that I complained of chest pain and arm pain and jaw pain. I don't remember that, though. All I remember is the horrible, horrible indigestion. I'm sure I had it, but I don't have any cognizance of it at this moment. It was the indigestion.
Uh-huh. So, Dr. Balkam, take us from your end.
Well, by the time I saw Mr. Feinberg, he was getting in pretty bad shape. Sometimes when you have a heart attack, you start to go into what's called cardiogenic shock, which is where your heart is losing its ability to pump enough to keep you alive. And he was in that situation. His heart rate had already dropped down to about 20. His blood pressure had dropped so low that it was no longer perfusing his organs. So his mentation was slowing down. And we made the decision right then that he was going to die if we didn't do something to support his heart. And so that's when I decided to put the Impella in. And an Impella is a temporary artificial heart that we can insert through your leg. It goes up into your heart, half in your heart and half out. Actually, Mr. Feinberg brought his with him. And so this
the
is
very one,
the
right?
Impella.
Oh, my goodness.
And so the aortic valve goes about right here, halfway down. And so it is able to pump blood from inside your heart, past your aortic valve, and to put it outside, above the aorta, to generate a blood pressure. And this tiny device can actually generate enough blood pressure and cardiac output to sustain a human being without their heart working at all. And so I made that decision pretty early on, which is an aggressive decision, but I think it was the right one. We put a temporary pacemaker in to pace his heart a little bit faster than it was. We put the Impella in to take the workload off his heart. And I could tell prior to that, he was very uncomfortable. He was a good patient, but I could tell he was not happy. He was uncomfortable. He was in pain. As soon as we turned the Impella on, I could see him relax, and I think he even dozed off.
Wow.
And then we took additional pictures of his heart, realized he had multi-vessel coronary artery disease, something that couldn't all be fixed with balloons. I believe we fixed one artery, the infarct-related artery. I had the surgeon come look at it, and he agreed with me. When you start to have a heart attack, if you have other blocked arteries, when the pressure inside your heart starts going up, it actually makes it harder and harder for the blood to go from your coronaries into the muscle of your heart. And it's a vicious cycle, and that's why people die. And so by putting the Impella in, relieving that pressure and generating a cardiac output to the rest of his body, it was able to allow his heart to rest. And so that's what we did. We rested his heart for a few days until it was safe for the surgeons to do bypass surgery on him. Then we removed his Impella, and apparently they gave it to him. And then he been a model patient since then. He goes to rehab. He's done everything we've asked of him.
That's amazing. How often is the Impella used?
So not very often. I bet we use 1 to 2 a month. Matter of fact, I know for a fact this weekend over the Memorial holiday, my partner had to put one in emergently in a situation similar to Mr. Feinberg, somebody in cardiogenic shock, to save their life, and then they'll probably get bypass. Sometimes we use them more electively if we know someone needs very high-risk angioplasty and stenting, so much so that we don't think the heart could tolerate us doing all that work on the heart without us helping it. We put an Impella in to take the workload off the heart while we fix the heart, and then we turn the Impella off and take it out after we're done with the angioplasty and stenting.
So it buys you some really valuable time.
It does, and there's not really a good alternative. There's another thing called a balloon pump, and there are a few other things, but nothing was able to generate cardiac output without the heart's assistance at all until we had the Impella. And it really has been a game changer in certain situations.
Wow. I'll bet you were very happy to hear that was available.
I was definitely happy. And again, I would not be here but for the efforts of Dr. Balkam and the magic technology of Christus Highland.
Well, we hear that a lot around here. And so tell me now, Richard, what are you up to now that you've had this procedure done and you're sort of back on your feet?
Well, let me add to that. Not only did Dr. Balkam save me, ultimately, I was in intensive care for quite a long time, and the crew there was incredible. Dr. Danish did the final the quadruple bypass. He was great. After that, I went to cardiac rehab with the nurses, and they taught me how to read sides of bottles and cans and know what not to eat. It got me to exercise. And so, everything it couldn't have been better from my perspective. What I'm up to, I'm reading a lot. I'm walking a lot. I'm going to the gym a lot. I'm spending my time, as I said, with my grandchildren. And I'm thoroughly enjoying retirement. I would have retired somewhat later in time, but this was the wake-up call.
Time to take it easy, right?
That's correct.
And you might take up bicycling.
Yes,
so you're not going to take it too easy, right?
Right.
And that's good. That's good for you. Well, it sounds like you're loving life. And that's what it's all about. That's what our heart doctors do. They give us more life.
And certainly in this situation, had it been a few years ago and the Impella was not available, I don't think the outcome would have been the same. It was he was just in such a bad situation. And even I was impressed at how his hemodynamics improved as soon as we turned the device on. So I was already a believer in him. Obviously, I used it. But he's a great example of a great save with modern technology.
Well, it's been a pleasure learning about your story and getting to know you and learning more about the Impella 5.5 with SmartAssist. That's great. Thanks so much, Dr. Balkam.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mr. Feinberg.